Hey, my Liptons. So I'm coming through with a late night, you know, uh, episode review of Dark Side of the Ring. So, y'all know for I think the past week or two, I told you that the show was coming back. I'm a fan of the show and everything like that. Before I start on this whole Tammy, Chris Candido story. I need to rant about Vice TV and everybody. I understand y'all going through some bankruptcies, y'all shutting down. I don't know what's happening over there. But can y'all please still market y'all show correctly? I feel like Dark Side of the Ring was marketed extremely well last season, like season 3 and season 2. But for some reason I feel like the marketing is dwindled. You know what I mean? I feel like when I go on Twitter now, I feel like the reactions, the trending part of it is not there. I feel like the creators only promote the show on Instagram and Twitter. Like, I understand they're doing interviews and things like that, but it's like girl, like, y'all need to do more press. Y'all need to be out here having billboards or something, because I feel like the shit, these are way too many great stories for y'all not to be having some you know, cheap ass promo for it. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like their lowest rated season ever since the beginning of the series. And that's just me being honest. Because it's like the promotion was just terrible. I didn't even know that season 4 came out until, because me, I always like to do updates on on Tammy's manslaughter case trial. So it's like it wasn't until I googled her name and I saw on the news that Eric Bischoff was, did like an episode on her on his podcast, only to find out that within that article I saw that Dark Side of the Ring was making an episode about that. And I was like, wait a minute, Dark Side of the Ring came back, and that's how you know that the shit wasn't promoted well. So I don't know, Vice, I know y'all going through some things, but can y'all please put the last bit of money that y'all have into some promotion for this fucking show? Also, another thing too, it's so freaking difficult to even watch this damn episode. It's like you go to the first of all, Vice needs to do. Oh my god, I'm so mad. I'm so mad. And I'm about to go into the review. Vice. First of all, y'all know a majority of Americans at this point do not have cable. Like, it has to be a majority at this point, because it's like we do not have cable. So you asking us for a TV provider, it's like you motherfuckers, like, we don't have Verizon or Optimum anymore. Okay, we have streaming platforms. And it's like, I understand y'all have it on Hulu, but it's like, and I have Hulu. So it's like, when I go on Hulu, it's only at season 3. So y'all need to be doing updates. Like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's like, I went on that trash ass Vice TV app to watch this episode. You know what I mean? And then the freaking thing kept buffering and kicking me out and buffering and kicking me out. And I was like, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. I'm going to do this because it's like, I'm a fan of the show. And it's like, I'm going to exhibit the patience. I'm going to exhibit it. But it's like, y'all are really trying me. So I don't know. I feel like, in a way, I do kind of feel like this should be their last season, because it's like, if y'all not gonna put y'all money where y'all mouth is, if y'all really care about these stories, y'all will put some money into some promo, and y'all will find a different way, instead of us having to put in our TV providers to watch the damn show. Have the shit. If a new episode is coming in, put that shit immediately on the streaming services for us to fucking watch. Anyway, had to sip on that. I had to sip on that because that I had to rant, because I was pissed when I was watching this episode. Not because of the episode, but because, just everything that was happening. And I tried to go on YouTube. YouTube didn't have the HD version, so I was like, look, you know what? Let me just stick with the app. So now, as y'all guys know, I have been talking about Tammy Lynn Sitch on my channel for, I would say, a month now, a month and some change. I feel like You know, Tammy is a very controversial figure within the wrestling community. She was a popular figure at one point. You know, she beautiful girl, beautiful woman, can talk on the mic. So, and just to see where her life started to where it has now ended, it is interesting to see like a timeline, like where did she, okay, where did Chris and Tammy go wrong? You know what I mean? Where did they go wrong? How did it lead to this? How did it lead to a death of a man who is in his early 30s and a woman who is now on trial for manslaughter? Someone needs to explain that to me, because that is crazy. That is a lot. Wow. And usually I like to keep, I like to hold people accountable. I like to hold people's feet to the fire. But after watching this episode, right, of Chris and Tammy, I do also feel like the wrestling business swallowed these two whole and spit them out. It's almost as if like they were put into this like spinner, and it was just like people, it was almost like a hamster wheel, just running and running and running and running and running, and then once the wheels start to break, they just get thrown out. It's on to the next one. And I feel like that's what happened with Chris and Tammy. So I want to get into them. I want to start in the beginning. I want to talk about the people in the documentary. In the show that spoke. Jim Cornette, Tom Pritchard, Mick Foley, Chris Candido's brother, Chris Candido's mom, and Lance Storm, a few, yeah. Those, I think that's the most that we've had in the episode, because I think at this point the wrestlers are not trying to come back to the dark side of the ring after everything that happened last season. That's a whole other topic. So they start off with Chris Candido. He's always wanted to be a wrestler ever since he was a child. Like, he's had drawings, everything like that, like in his attic. Like he loved this business in a way, almost to his detriment, and we're gonna talk about that at the end. He loved his business. He ended up meeting Tammy at, I think, at a wrestling show, because she was she was in the audience apparently when she was watching Chris Candido. I mean, that's what the episode portrayed. She was watching him, and Chris already immediately took a liking to her, like fell in love with her. They both fell in love with each other. They were high school sweethearts. Chris was trying to get into the wrestling business. He finally bumped into Jim Cornette, and Jim Cornette was the promoter at Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the South. Jim was like, putting, because Jim. Let me say, you know what? Before I even talk about it, and before I even continue on with the story, I will say this about Jim Cornette. I know if y'all guys watch my earlier videos I did on Tammy Sitch, and I was talking about the court cases and the updates and things like that, and I was saying in those videos, I was like, even though yes, Jim Cornette has talked about it once or twice, but I feel like Jim Cornette doesn't have the same veracity and the same anger that he has for other people within the wrestling community. It can be the simplest things. Like Jim Cornette got beef for everybody. Okay? He don't like Kenny Omega. He don't like Tony Khan. He don't like this. He don't like that. He don't like this person. He don't like that person. And he's willing to express it. He don't like John Moxley. But I felt at that time I was like, but for the people that he does like, for some reason it's very hard for him to criticize them. And I felt like one of them was Tammy. And for me, I was kind of like, yes, I understand, you like her and everything like that. You felt like she was talented, but it's like, sir, like, no, like, this woman is literally accused of killing somebody. So I'm gonna need you to put way more effort into your videos and update. The same way I'm doing updates is the same way you need to be doing updates. So at first, that was my attitude towards Jim Cornette. When I watched this episode, In a way, I definitely, I kind of got it, you know. I definitely can see why it's so hard for Jim to really, really criticize Tammy in the way that everybody else is criticizing Tammy. And it's because Jim Cornette genuinely sees Tammy as like a daughter in a way. Like if you watch this, you would like this man was training this girl. Like he was writing her promos. He was like, "Listen, this is what you gotta do. Like Hillary Clinton is like not really liked in the South, and this is how you gotta act like her. You know, be a heel, do this, do that." Like he was helping her out, and then she was spitting the lines for him, and he was so proud of her. Like you can tell that how proud he was of Tammy. You know, like he definitely looked. It was almost like a father. I guess you can say it was more like a father daughter like relationship between him and her. So in a way, I do feel like that's why it was difficult for him to really discuss it, discuss everything that's been happening with Sonny. And I kind of understood that now. I kind of understand, even though I still feel like he should be, yes, talk about him, but girl, talk about her the same way you would talk about these other girls. Okay. But I understand. Like after watching this episode, I was like, yeah, he definitely has. Like you can tell that he's like hurt about everything that's happened to her and what she's allowed to happen, and I can tell that he wished that she could be doing better, or she could have done better. It's sad for him in a way. It's very sad. And he felt that way about Chris Candido himself. He felt like Chris Candido was super duper talented, extremely talented, and he was talented. So I understood him now. I definitely do understand him in a better. I see this whole thing in a different light when it comes to Jim Cornette's bias towards Tammy. So back to the story. He meets Jim Cornette. I think he's paying Chris $75 a week or something. I think that's what they said. Oh no, $75 a match. I was like, child, the things that y'all were doing. But and then he starts putting Tammy. He starts putting Tammy on TV. She starts acting like a heel, trying to act like a Hillary Clinton, you know, uh, you know, heel, which honestly that's very reminiscent of real life to when it comes to Hillary Clinton, but that's a whole other conversation. And it starts getting over in Smoky Mountain. People starts to pay attention to Tammy, and they really honed on the fact that like Tammy was the star in this whole thing, as far as like the characters. Personally, like she was the star. She knew how to talk. She was savvy. You know, she came off confident. So she was definitely the star. So Vince McMahon ends up bringing her and Candido back into WWF. At first, it wasn't, it definitely was not hitting in the beginning because, like, I think Vince McMahon brought them as like bodybuilders or I don't know what the hell. In the early '90s, it was tough for Vince in the WWFs. Well, not mid '90s. It was tough for them. So Vince was just throwing anything at the wall, and I do want to touch on this part, because during Tammy's time in the WWF, there's Tom Pritchard, Mick Foley, they were touching on it a little bit. They were like, oh well, Tom Pritchard, I would say, let me say something. Tom Pritchard does not like he does not like Sunny at all, child. If you watch this episode, you can tell that he does not like her. He was like, oh yeah, Tammy, she was getting big headed. She was egotistical. Da, 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 da. Like she felt like she was all that. So then Mick Foley, and honestly, I'm kind of happy Mick Foley had, and I'm glad that the producers of Dark Side of the Ring kept that rebuttal in, because Mick Foley was like, listen, if you're in the wrestling business, you are bound to get an ego. You are bound to get big headed. You are bound to think that you're all that. It literally happens to all the top stars, So it's like, do people have this smoke for Tammy because, she's Big head, or do they have the smoke for Tammy? It's because she's in a man's world, being a woman, and she has this ego, and that's why a lot of people in the back have heat with her. And that was an interesting rebuttal because I do gotta play devil's advocate, even though I personally do not like Tammy, you know, but I do gotta play devil's advocate. I do find it weird when I see shoot interviews and da da da. Oh well, Tammy was this, Tammy was that. Tammy was big headed, whatever. It was like, okay, but what wrestler wasn't doing that? We're gonna sit here and act as if Shawn Michaels wasn't a freaking fuckboy and like on drugs and being disrespectful. We're not gonna sit here and act as if Bret Hart wasn't egotistical. We're not gonna sit here and act as if Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't have an ego. Was cursing people out when people crossed him the wrong way. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, X-Pac, like everybody in their mama had egos. Everybody in their mama was, in a way, assholes, especially during that time. Everybody was assholes. So I do find it a little bit like, okay, let's just single out Tammy, in a way. And I don't get me wrong, I know people are gonna be like, oh no, we criticized Shawn Michaels for his attitude. I get it, but it's like, I think that if Tammy didn't have all the bullshit stuff that's happening with her, with the DUIs and everything like that, how much would you guys really say that? Because Shawn Michaels, obviously when he redeemed himself and things like that, people respect him. But it's like with Tammy, if without the bullshit, would you guys still see her see her in that same way, or would you guys see her as a redeemed person? It's just a thought for me. But I do like what Mick Foley had to say when it comes to that, because he was like, listen, like everybody had egos in the back, like even Mick Foley had an ego, So I don't think that it was unusual for her to be feeling like, yeah, I'm that girl, And plus, she was the star in the relationship between her and Chris. Vince was giving her TV time. Vince was giving her the mic. She knew how to talk. So I don't know. I feel like, with the whole ego thing, it's like, yeah, she had an ego, but it's like, okay, and they touched on. This is the part where I do feel like it kind of rushed into it, like because they touched on like Tammy's quote unquote entanglement with Shawn Michaels, and I feel like, and obviously that whole love story thing has been told ad nauseum by Tammy herself. I mean, she wrote a whole book about it and apparently has a whole chapter about her relationship with Shawn Michaels. So we heard enough. But I am glad they touched on it because, people were really upset with Tammy and that particular relationship that she had with him. To this day, people are still upset about it. And people were, in the show, they were just, in this episode, they were discussing whether Chris knew about it. And, obviously the people in the show were like, yeah, he definitely knew because everybody in that locker room knew. How could he not know? Tammy started saying, they put old clips of Tammy's like old shoot interviews. And she was saying like, her and Chris never talked about it. It was never brought up because, it was like, listen, he ain't going to bring it up. I ain't going to bring it up because I don't want it to be an uncomfortable situation. I ain't going to bring it up. Now, personally for me, I do believe that Chris knew. Well, okay. Tammy claimed, and this obviously, and I know someone in the comments told me that, Tammy's a liar, such and such and such, but I do have to, for a disclaimer and, for other reasons. Tammy did state that her and Chris were broken up at the time. They were taking a break. And she just wanted to, explore her options. If that is true, obviously, then Tammy was not wrong for having a relationship with, or fling with Shawn Michaels. If Tammy and Chris were broken up, hell, he has the right to go date out. She has the right to go date out. Like just because, like, I don't know. I feel like, and this the other part where I gotta play devil's advocate. Yeah, y'all really about to be making me play devil's advocate. It's like let's think about it in real life. If you and your girlfriend or you and your boyfriend, y'all been dating since y'all were like teenagers, and you guys get to like your early 20s. Listen, the early 20s is when you're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to be outside, and you're both. Well, I mean, maybe one person is not feeling the relationship. She's just like, listen, like, it's not like I'm not getting anything of satisfactory right now in this relationship. Like, I want to explore my options. Da da da. And Chris Candido gives her that permission. And it's like, yeah, let's take a break. Let's do our own thing for a little bit. And maybe we'll come back together. Then she was not wrong to have a relationship with Shawn Michaels, if that's the case. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's like, if that was the case, then she was not wrong. However, I do feel like where Tammy did go wrong in that whole thing was that, first of all, y'all know Shawn Michaels at that time was not the greatest person. He was, he had the clique and everything like that. Those guys were also probably like, and they said it too. They said that back in the locker room, Chris Candido wasn't liked. So maybe those guys were like picking on Chris Candido and like, and they didn't elaborate why. And that's the thing too. I feel like they should have elaborated why he wasn't liked. But I do think that has to do with the Sonny and Shawn thing. I think that like Shawn and them were like picking on him and like, throwing shade. Oh yeah, your girl was messing with, the leader of the clique, blah 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 blah. How do you feel about things like that? You know how men talk. Things like that. And I feel like at that moment, I do think that Tammy should have, if that was the case, Tammy should have stood up for Chris and be like, listen, yeah, I know that, me and you, we're having this little thing, this little fling, but you need to shut the fuck up. At the end of the day, Chris, we work together. Like, that's my work buddy. But it's like, I'm not going to let you tear somebody else down to lift. It's just like, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. And that's why I feel like Tammy should have in a way taken a stand. But, the allure of the Heartbreak Kid can be euphoric. So they then go into the fact that Chris Candido and Tammy start using drugs within the WWF, because back when they were smoking Mountain Wrestling, they weren't like, I mean, not whatever it's told. I mean, according to the brother, he started abusing drugs in WWF because he had the broken neck. And that's the thing too. I don't be understanding with these wrestlers. I'm like, listen, if y'all had broke, and I get it at that time. If you take one day off, you can lose your spot. But it's like, bro, and it's the same thing with Kurt Angle. He did this. I remember watching his documentary on A&E. If y'all have broken bones, nigga, like, if y'all have broken bones, I'm gonna need y'all to go to the hospital and get some surgery to fix that, okay? Excuse me. You cannot fix that with samosas and pain medicine and Tylenol, okay? That shit is only like a few hours temporary. It's ridiculous that these wrestlers will will legit put their bodies like while they still have broken bones. Can someone explain that? That's insanity to me. I'm sorry. I can't. No. So I do think that that's crazy. So Chris Candido started, obviously he started abusing drugs. With him it started as a necessity. With Sonny, it was, Jim Cornette even said it, like, it was socially, like, Shawn Michaels was on drugs, drinking, everybody else was, she was like, what, maybe I'll do a little something, a little bit of a sip. Well, what harm can it do? And it did a lot of harm, So, Chris Candido ended up going to ECW, and because, he wasn't satisfied in WWF, because he felt like WWF wasn't doing anything with him. So he left, and he felt like ECW was doing him right. He was good. Tammy ended up following him to ECW. They were all working there. Everything was good at first. But then the drug, like people started to notice that Tammy started to look more and more like either high or intoxicated when coming to the ring. And they put those old videos up. Girl, Sonny was looking a mess. And so was Chris. You can honestly you could think that Chris's heart was about to explode. That's how bad. That's how bad. Yeah, this is one of the pictures from ECW. Like the hair was crazy. She just she wasn't her best at this time. And honestly, it's about to get worse. What I'm about to talk to you guys about. Like they were slurring their words. Paul Heyman started to notice it. Like they showed this promo of this picture here on the episode, and y'all, I was cringing through this part of the episode because I was like, get these two high people out of my face. It's like Tammy is just eating that banana while Candido, he literally looks like a freaking like blueberry or something, or raspberry in the face. And then he's just talking like he's not even speaking English when he's talking, when he's on the stick. So they were clearly under the influence. They were very much so under the influence. And Paul Heyman, and they talked about this. Listen, Paul Heyman is a shady dude. I can't even lie. As much as I like him, his mind and everything, but he's very shady. So he made Tammy, like, I guess obviously for ratings, made Tammy go on camera and talk about her and Chris's issues, to pop a rating. And Tammy was like legit crying. Like she was like really telling her story, and a lot of people didn't like that because they felt like, Paul Heyman was just exploiting her drug use and her emotions for a TV rating. And Jim Cornette was very pissed about it too. So it was what it was. But Paul Heyman ended up leaving Tammy and Chris in debt. Because Paul Heyman basically told Chris and Tammy, listen, y'all guys gotta take some time off because y'all are really, really drugged out your mind. I can't have you out here, so I'm gonna let you stay at home. Reimbursements and all this. I don't know. Paul Heyman just basically left Tammy and Chris Candido on debt, to have debt to the point where they had to sell their house to pay off the debt out for ECW. So they ended up going to Puerto Rico, and that's when, girl, in Puerto Rico, you can start to see that Chris Candido has not been working out. He had like a whole dad bod going on there. Tammy looked like a whole soccer mom. Like she was going through it. They were both going through it. So then, and honestly, Chris Candido's brother was like really, really like there to support him with everything. Like when Tammy was having the relationship with Sean, and then their little domestic, because Chris and Tammy had domestic disputes. The brother was there. He was younger. He was the younger brother, so he was exposed to a lot of BS. And then with the Puerto Rico stuff, so Chris just basically said, you know what? I'm gonna change my lifestyle. I'm gonna get off these drugs. I'm gonna work out, and I'm gonna get back to a place where it's like I can be happy again. And he promised that to his brother, and that's what he did. So then they ended up going to TNA, right? Chris Candido. And he's doing well in the beginning. He's doing great. And then he breaks his, like, I think leg or shin or something, or his ankle. So here's the thing. When you break a bone or anything like that, and this is, at this point, is very much so common knowledge. I think at that time it wasn't, maybe it was, it obviously was, and a doctor will tell you, but I think that Chris was so, and it's unfortunate, but he was so adamant on like being on TV and being at these wrestling matches. It's unfortunate, but, and I'm sure the doctor told him not to fly. Like, with the broken leg, because with broken legs, because or broken whatever, any broken bones, if you start flying, traveling, flying, it can cause blood clots, and that can cause death, basically. So doctors always advise that, but Chris was so stubborn and headstrong that literally 2 days after he had surgery on his leg, he gets on a plane to come to TNA. And, Chris's mom was like, listen, Chris, like, you gotta rest, son. Like, I get it, this is what you love and everything like that, but you gotta, take care of your health. He said, oh, mom, da 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 da. I'm just gonna do this. It's not like I'm wrestling. So he comes to TNA with that whole, mind you, that broken leg is real. He comes there, and literally when he's flying back, I don't know if he's flying back home or whatever, he ends up like the blood clot ends up like giving him like pneumonia. Well, it goes to his lung, I think they said, I think it went to his lung or his heart, and then like he ends up getting like pneumonia. Then he dies of like a heart attack or something due to the blood clot, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. So the brother ended up coming to the hospital and held his hand. And he can tell that the brother, Chris was like, he was gone, and like everybody was heartbroken. Like Tom Pritchard, Jim, Lance Storm, it was a mess. It was a mess, and it's crazy because it's so weird to me. Like when I look at Chris Candido when because honestly, if you were to look at him and it's like around the time where he was towards his death time, like he didn't even look, early 30s. Like when they said, I actually thought that he looked way older, like you can tell like the wrestling business really wore that man out. It really wore him out. And it led to his death. His passion for the wrestling business led to his death. And it's tough. There's the part I kind of roll my eyes at. I don't like when people, that's the thing I don't like. I don't like when, like, for instance, like if a wrestler passes away, right? Let's say if it's like mid-card or, mid-card, like a mid-card wrestler. I remember they did this with Chris Kanyon too. Oh yeah, if he was alive today, he will be the biggest star. He will be this, he will be that. I'm like, can we be serious, y'all? Like, don't get me wrong. I think that Chris Candido would have been maybe like a great agent, or like like if he was alive today, he would have been a great coach for a lot of these upcoming wrestlers, for him to like really, really be there for them and teach them the moves and how to, operate, how to, to learn the stuff within the business. But I don't think that he was gonna be like, come on, y'all. And Jim Cornette kept on saying that. I was like, Jim, like, be serious. It's like, even you, Jim, you had Chris for how long? And yet you could even make him an A+, like a freaking, like a superstar, like someone like a Rock, or like, someone who's talked about in town. Like, you could even do that. People were talking about tearing me. So it was like, y'all couldn't even put him in a position where he was at a Shawn Michaels status, or like a Bret Hart status. I do feel like Chris Candido was always going to be mid-card. I do feel that way. And I think that that's okay to say. I don't think that there's nothing wrong with saying that. But to think, oh yes, he was going to be the biggest star if he was still alive. Nah, if he was still alive, he would have been way older. Okay? So, and y'all know that they're looking at the younger talent now. He probably would have been a coach. Or even if he was wrestling, he would be like a, I don't think that people would be too interested in that. So, do I think that Chris Candido was very talented? Yes, but I don't think that he's on a status, and even if he was alive, I don't think that he would have been on a status of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin or something, or like a, Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, nah, I don't think that. Now, towards the end they touched a little bit on Tammy, and honestly, this is why I want a documentary, because it's like, or like to give us a part two, because like the way you guys just just added the DUIs and all that, it's like towards like the end part of it, it's like, listen, y'all need to add a little bit more context, see where her life was going, because let's be very clear, before all of that, especially after Chris Candido's death, Tammy was doing okay for a little bit during that time, and then she kind of went off the rails, and then it was like she doing good a little bit, and then back to. So I feel like this is why I wish that it could have been a little bit longer, or like had a part two, or had like a documentary sense. But this was the first episode. I enjoyed it. I do. Okay. So, do I think that this was the very, very best episode that they ever had? No, I still feel like personally, I think that Chris Benoit episode and that Brian Pillman episode was really, really good. That part one and part two really, really ate. And that's the thing. I like when they do that, because I feel like it adds more context. It drags out the emotion. So, but this is a good episode. I liked it. And I will be following up with Tammy and everything going on with this case. But I am happy with the people that they chose to speak on this. Particularly, Jim Cornette was going to speak, because he knows, Tammy is his girl. And, Chris Candido, he loved Chris Candido as well. Lance Storm, Tom Pritchard, Mick Foley. I'm glad, Mick Foley was definitely the devil's advocate type in this episode, so I'm glad that he was there. He was picked to do that, because I think that we need that in these kind of talks. But yeah, I think that, listen, Vice gotta do better. Vice gotta do better when it comes to their marketing, because this was horrendous. The fact that I am a fan of the show and I didn't know that the show was coming out until like 2 weeks before, that's crazy. So but that's about it. Honestly, it's a sad story. The whole thing is a sad story. May Chris rest in peace, but we'll see where Tammy goes from here. Tell me what you guys' thoughts is. Did you guys watch the episode? How do you guys feel? Do you think that, Chris Candido would have been a bigger star than he was if he was still alive? Do you think that Tammy would have, been still be on the downward spiral if Chris had been alive or not? So we'll see. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get us to 500 subscribers, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.